So I know that a lot of people are pretty intimidated by the process of doing an informational interview, but it doesn't have to be scary and it doesn't have to feel uncomfortable and gross. Today I want to tell you my story of the best informational interview I ever did. So years ago now, I was working in higher ed and things had started to get really toxic in my office, and I was starting to get kind of unhappy with it and just not feeling quite right about how everything was and where my career was going. And so I reached out to someone who does some really, really great training for career counselors around kind of the Myers-Briggs and how it plays out in our lives, and sort of, you know, train folks to administer this. Her name is Nancy, and I scheduled an informational interview with her. And it had been a long time since I had done one of these for my own sake before. So I was actually really nervous going into it. I met her in a coffee shop, I sat there. I got to the coffee shop really early, and I sat there and I looked around, and I had encountered her before, but I didn't really know her particularly well. So, perched on my little stool in the coffee shop and looked around for every woman who came in. Is that her? Is that her? Is that her? And then she finally came in, and I was super, super nervous. But fortunately, I had done what I tell you to do. I had taken a lot of notes about what I really wanted to ask her. And so she sat down, and I was super nervous, and I probably said some really dumb, like, nice to meet you kind of things, probably not real slick, and got into this place where we were just having a conversation eventually. And so that's one of the tricks with the informational interview. It's fine if you're super nervous at the beginning. That's just kind of a natural process, like kind of get into the space of it. But I got into the space of it because she was super nice and really welcoming. And after a few minutes, I thought, right, this is actually one of my people, right? This is my tribe. This is someone who does what I enjoy doing. And she also enjoys doing it. So we started the conversation, and I had some basic questions ready for her, things that I really wanted to ask. But she's also a career counselor. So as we're kind of going through the process, it became very clear to her that I was really unhappy in my job. And she, at that point, took a little bit of control of the conversation. She said, so, here's the thing with careers, right? There's this arc of satisfaction. And, a lot of times people are going up the arc and they're really happy, everything is great. And then they sort of hit that midpoint. Things start to feel a little bit off. And she said, I think you're right here. And I think if you stay, it's just going to start going down. And I think you're never going to be able to find your happy space in this particular organization again. And it turns out she was right. I wish I had taken her advice a little bit more to heart, because I did stay for a couple of years after that, and things really did start to go down, and I started to get really unhappy. But the point of it was really kind of relaxing into the space of having a conversation with just another human being. Once I got out of my headspace of being nervous and worried that I was going to make the wrong impression, I was going to stick my foot in my mouth, I was going to, suddenly flail around and knock over all the coffee cups, or that I was going to look stupid. All of those stories were kind of going in my head, which is part of why I was so nervous. I also really wanted to impress this person because she's someone I really admire. And I had to kind of deal with all of that baggage at the front end of this informational interview. That's a really normal part of the process. So as you set up to do these informational interviews, you're likely to find that at the beginning, you're just going to have a lot of those same anxieties. They'll be the ones that are personal to you. If you are a quieter person, you might be thinking like, what if I don't have enough to say? But don't let it stand in your way. I'm so thankful that I had that conversation with Nancy, and she was wonderful. And she gave me so many great insights and ideas about where I could go with this. And I think it's largely because I had her sort of in the back of my head that whole time, kind of helping me write my story differently, that I was actually able to go into private practice when the time was right. She is a private practitioner, and as I said, she does a lot of training around the Myers-Briggs for other career counselors. So I had her and a couple of my other mentors in mind as I kind of made that decision. But she was my first informational interview, at least for my own sake, in a really long time. I was always really happy doing kind of info sessions for other people. I was always looking for people to connect my clients with. It was really easy for me. I could talk to anyone if I was doing it for a client. So if I'd be out looking for someone who did, veterinary medicine, I could, use my LinkedIn and whatever else and find vets and do a kind of a quick info session to make sure that they were kind of a good fit for my client. No problem. This was for me. And all of my insecurities came roaring to the front. And I was sure that she was going to think I was some kind of idiot and I had no idea what I was talking about, and blah, blah, blah. And I had to push through it. because I was getting to the point in my career where I knew I wasn't really happy anymore. And I needed someone else's advice. We get kind of into our own thing, into our own headspace, and we can't see a way out of it. And that's part of why these informational interviews are so important. Now, as it happened, I wasn't looking for a major career change. I still wanted to do what I was doing. And I continued to get a ton of satisfaction out of my work, but I was doing it in a place that no longer fit me. And I really kind of got to talk through that in my informational interview with Nancy. If I had been looking for a vastly different kind of career path, it still would have been really great for me just to talk to someone else doing something different. So I encourage you to kind of push through any of that nervousness or anxiety that you might be feeling at the beginning point of these informational interviews. It's two people having a conversation, probably in virtual space, but that doesn't have to change things so fundamentally that you don't do it. They can be such rich, cool, fabulous, engaging conversations. And even if they're not, even if you have an informational interview and you leave it thinking, oh, thank goodness I don't do that, that's still really beneficial to you. And sometimes in the process of that conversation, you will be able to pull out some details of why that doesn't fit you, and sometimes you won't. Don't worry either way. If you get some clarity in the moment, if you think, aha, this is why I don't want this job, then you can figure out a way to formulate a question to that person related to that. So you would say something like, wow, it sounds like this is a really great job for you, and I can really hear your passion for it. I think I would probably be better in a position that was less directly people facing. Do you know anyone who does that? Or whatever, right? But regardless, even if you have an informational interview with someone whose job sounds like the worst possible thing in the world for you, aren't you glad you know now? And you can stop doing research in that particular area. I would say maybe do one more info session, just because sometimes people have a very specific view of a career field that isn't necessarily true of the whole field. So talk to one more person if you have a bad informational interview and see if it's really the case that that's a poor fit job for you. But you'll figure it out pretty quickly. And so you benefit either way from doing these informational interviews. Now, it is a weird time right now, of course, and so one of the things I really encourage people to do is to send a thank you to the person you do your informational interview with. That's maybe a $5 or $10 gift card to a small local independent coffee shop or something like that. It can be a little bit tricky to find, but I managed to find a few just by using Google and putting, gift card coffee shop and seeing what came up. And I think that's a really nice way to do it these days, because so many of our local businesses are really struggling these days. So check it out, tell me how it goes, and try to bust through that anxiety you're feeling for the informational interview. It's still worth doing. So, do it. Let me know if you're anxious, but you absolutely can do it, and have some fun with it.